All right, let's talk about something so many of us remember: chickenpox. You know, that telltale, itchy rash? It's a moment most parents absolutely dread. For generations, it was just a rite of passage, right? But what do you really need to know about it today in our modern world? Well, we're going to break it all down. So you spot it. Your kid has a spot. And then, wait, there's another one and another. You're staring at that infamous itchy rash, and that one big question is running through your head. Is this it? Is this actually chickenpox? Let's find out. We're going to start right from the top with the basics. Okay, first step, Section 1. What even is chickenpox? Let's get a handle on this super common, super contagious illness. So what exactly are we dealing with here? Well, chickenpox, its official name is varicella, is a virus. And man, is it contagious. But here's the important part. It's usually a pretty mild disease, especially for kids under 10. That's really the key thing to remember. Super easy to catch, but for most kids, it's not a severe illness. But get this, the story doesn't just end when the spots fade away. This is a really fascinating and kind of crucial point. The chickenpox virus, it never really leaves your body. No, seriously. It just hangs out dormant in your nerve cells for decades. And then it can pop back up later in life as shingles. It's like this unwelcome sequel you never asked for. Okay, so that brings us right into Section 2, the symptoms and how this thing spreads. We're going to trace the whole journey of the virus, right from exposure all the way to recovery, so you know exactly what you're looking at. Now, this timeline is so important for understanding how it spreads around so easily. See, after someone's exposed, there's this quiet period, 2, maybe 3 weeks, where nothing seems to be happening. But here's the really tricky part, the reason it's so contagious. A person is already spreading the virus for a full 24 hours before that first itchy spot even shows up. And they stay contagious until every single one of those pocks has scabbed over. And the spots themselves, they have a whole life cycle of their own. It's a clear 4-step process. First, it looks like a little red pimple. Then it turns into this little water-droppy blister. After that, it pops and becomes an open sore. And finally, it dries up into a scab. You know, seeing spots at all these different stages at the very same time, that's one of the classic telltale signs that you're dealing with chickenpox. Okay, so besides the rash, what else should you be looking for? Well, in kids, it's usually not too bad. Maybe a mild fever, they're a bit tired. But for adults, whoa, it can feel way worse, a lot more like a really bad flu. The rash itself tends to kick off on the chest, back, and head, and it comes in these waves, they call them crops, over a few days. And yeah, those spots can show up in the weirdest places. We're talking inside the mouth, up the nose, even all over the scalp. All right, Section 3, managing that itch. Let's be real. This is the part that really matters, right? You know what it is. Now, how do you make them comfortable? Let's dive into all the practical, at-home things you can do for that nonstop, relentless itch. Okay, first things first, and this is a huge safety warning. If there's a fever, you're going to want to reach for paracetamol. But you must, and I mean never, give aspirin to a child who has chickenpox. It's linked to this rare but incredibly serious condition called Ray's syndrome. So just don't do it. It's a non-negotiable. So to tackle that awful itch, you've got some really good options. You know, calamine lotion, it's a classic for a reason. It really helps. Also, a big one. Keep their fingernails cut short. This helps stop them from scratching, which can lead to infections or even scars. A nice, soothing bath with a bit of baking soda can work wonders. Just remember to gently pat their skin dry afterwards, don't rub it. And, you know, if the itching is just really, really bad, an antihistamine might be the way to go. And here is a super simple but absolutely essential tip. Keep them hydrated. A fever can really dry you out, and if they've got spots in their mouth, eating and drinking can be painful. So just offer lots and lots of fluids. Water, juice, hey, even ice pops are a great idea. It's a comforting way to get those fluids in. Okay, let's move on to Section 4, risks and complications. Now, we've said that chickenpox is usually mild, and it is. But we do need to talk about those rare times when you should be concerned and what to keep an eye out for. But before we do that, let's put this all in perspective. I'm just going to read a direct quote from our source material here. It is usually a mild illness with complete recovery. So please keep that front and center in your mind as we talk about the rare exceptions to that rule. So what are we talking about when we say risks? Well, the most common problem is a bacterial infection of the spots, usually from scratching, and that's what can lead to scarring. Then you have the much more serious stuff, which, again, is very rare. Things like pneumonia or encephalitis, which is an inflammation of the brain. And there's also a specific risk to an unborn baby if a woman gets chickenpox while she's pregnant. So, the big question for a lot of parents, when can they go back to school or daycare? The rule is actually really simple. They need to stay home until every last spot is dried up and covered by a scab. This usually takes about a week, and sticking to this is absolutely key to stop the virus from spreading to other kids. And that brings us to our final section, prevention. In this day and age, preventing chickenpox pretty much comes down to one thing, the vaccine. Today, there's a vaccine that's widely available. It's usually given to kids when they're about 12 to 18 months old. And this one shot has completely changed the game. It's made an illness that was once incredibly common, way, way rarer than it was, even just a generation ago. Of course, before we had the vaccine, the only way to become immune was to get sick with it. And it's true. If you get chickenpox the old-fashioned way and recover, you can typically expect to have a lifelong immunity. You're not going to get it again. And that leads to a really interesting final thought, doesn't it? A lot of us grew up hearing about, or maybe even going to, chickenpox parties, where parents would intentionally get kids together to expose them and just get it over with. But now, with a safe and effective vaccine being a routine part of childhood, are those parties and maybe even widespread chickenpox itself becoming a thing of the past? It's kind of wild to think we're watching a piece of public health history change right before our very eyes.